people are being very clear that they don't like you.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Justin Trudeau made sure to make his rounds to the once friendly mainstream media. Although this was filmed on Christmas Eve, I don't know if it gave Trudeau an appetite to celebrate afterwards.
Let's take a look.
Your polls would indicate that you're not heading for a better year. 7 out of 10 Canadians want you to step down. There was a recent poll saying that Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney were both more popular choices than you to lead the Liberal Party. Why do you think Canadians are so frustrated with you?
So,
she doesn't mince words, does she?
Yeah, welcome to the interview, Trudeau. So, yeah, let's take a look at that. So, this was a recent poll done by Nanos and distributed in the Globe and Mail. And, yeah, what this is showing is who, essentially Liberal voters, prefer to be leader of the Liberal Party for the next election. So last year, around this time, 25% of people said that they wanted Trudeau to be the leader for the next election. That's not very high for your own party.
No, not at all.
Just saying. 51% said they wanted somebody else. 17% said they had no preference, and 7% said they were unsure. Now you fast forward a year, only 19% want Justin Trudeau as the leader of the Liberal Party. 55% don't want him. 22% say they don't care. And only 5% say they're unsure.
So contrast this with the NDP convention that was held this past fall. And Jagmeet got pretty much an 80% approval rating. And that was considered bad.
Right.
Now look at JT, who Liberal supporters are saying only 19% of them support him as leader. That's horrendous.
So, if you recall, the interviewer said that Canadians on the whole prefer Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney over Justin Trudeau. But that doesn't tell the whole story. This is the whole story. You have Chrystia Freeland at 18%. Of this poll. Now, this poll is disconnected from the previous one because this specific question was who's the most appealing candidate for the leadership of the Liberal Party? And the options were none of the above, you're not sure, and then they gave the different options that are on the chart here. So 24% said nobody on this list. 19% said, well, we're unsure. Only 18% of people said Chrystia Freeland. Like, Trudeau is doing bad. Half as much, by the way. Trudeau's at 9%.
How is he half as popular as Freeland? They're both awful.
Right. Freeland's awful. That's why she only has 18%.
Quote unquote only, but how does she have twice as much as Trudeau?
Right. And
how is this possible? What backwards world are we living in?
And then you have Anita Nan with 5%, Jolie with 4%, François Philippe Chihuahua Champagne at 2%,
Fraser's on there?
Fraser at probably 1.9%, and then Dominic LeBlanc. Yeah, I don't even know why he's on the chart. But, like, this is what we're talking about when we say there is nobody that is ready to step in and take hold of the Liberal Party because Trudeau's cabinet is so weak, and the guy that's number 2 isn't even in the government. So this is who you have to work with, Liberals. And what you people are saying in terms of answering this poll is you don't want anybody who is in the current government or waiting in the wings to take hold of the Liberal Party. In short, the Liberal Party is a disaster.
Well, I think, first of all, it's a really frustrating time, full stop. There's so much going on around the world. There's so much impacting us here at home. There's so many challenges people are facing in their daily lives, from groceries to rent, that, yeah, there's a lot of frustration. But we have been working incredibly hard to deliver for Canadians in really concrete ways. And to my mind, this is exactly not the time to be slowing down or to stop fighting for people. We have been focused on delivering for Canadians for 8 years now, and the context we're in right now, where progress has become so fragile because of global and large macro events, is the time to be doubling down and rolling up our sleeves, and that's what I'm here for.
Okay, so you heard it here, folks. Your polling numbers are consistently deteriorating over the course of a year. That should tell you that maybe we're not doing a great job. So Trudeau's response to that is, well, clearly we just need to keep going, even though everyone is basically telling us to stop what we're doing.
Yeah, we need to double down.
We need to keep going because everybody's wrong and I'm right.
Well, and that's just it. That's what I was going to say. It was that Trudeau thinks he knows better than everybody else. You know, your life's not difficult right now. You're not having trouble paying the rent or affording groceries because of this inflation caused by Trudeau. You don't know anything. Let me, Mr. Trudeau, take care of it because I know what's best for this country and the Canadians who live here don't.
Listen, everybody, I'm a drama teacher and I have a history major as my finance minister. We know about finance. So you just need to relax because you don't know what you're talking about. Let the arts majors talk to you about finance.
And I understand wanting to advance that agenda and that it's hard to let go of being in power once you're in. But historically, Canadian prime ministers don't get elected 4 times in a row, and people are being very clear that they don't like you.
Wow.
Oh, shots fired. Wow. Burn.
That's something else. We're only a couple minutes into this interview.
This is amazing.
Question 2. Question 2. So, yeah, well, that's nice of you to say, but nobody likes you here, man.
But okay, I will point out, have you guys noticed how even Trudeau's bought and paid for media is starting to turn on him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because they know what gets views. And it's not kissing his ass.
No, and people are tired of the ass kissing 100%. And remember, like they're noticing viewership down on YouTube, but they're definitely noticing that viewership is down on their mainstream channels, on TV, on broadcasting. That's where they make all of their money, everybody, is the commercials that are around their newscast. So viewership has been dropping like a stone to the point where CBC couldn't even have a New Year's show. Like, give me a break.
Well, just think of how many people that you know in your life that still, A, have cable, and B, sit down to watch cable news. I mean, if you're going to watch it on cable, you have to sit down at a particular time. You watch your particular broadcast, and that's it. With the internet, you can sit down and watch it whenever you want. So, of course, people aren't choosing to watch it on TV.
People are frustrated right now. But on a personal level, I made a commitment in 2015 to a whole bunch of young people who came out to vote for the very, very first time that we were going to be doing the right kinds of things to secure the promise of this country in a way that people were worried about. And years later, even with everything we've done on the environment, on inclusion, on gender equality, on growing the economy, on reconciliation, those young people, 8 years later, are having trouble paying their rent, worried about their future in ways that are just as tangible, if not more, because of the global context we're in. And I didn't make a promise that I was going to make things better for them and then walk away after 4 years or even after 8 years. I said I'd be there to fight for them every single day.
Even if they don't want you there.
Even if they don't want you there.
But he's not making things better for Canadians. I think if you poll just like a random Canadian off the street, hey you, has your life improved under Justin Trudeau? Most people you come across are going to say, no, it has not.
Well, I'm going to stay for people, whether they want me to be here or not. But this is a democracy. They don't want you. They don't want you. They don't want you to keep trying because your trying is making everything worse.
Well, and not only do Canadians not want Trudeau as their prime minister, but we've heard from Liberal insiders that they do not want Trudeau as the leader of their own party.
Yeah, he's been asked to step down by more than a few, and in general, the Liberals are not a happy bunch right now.
We suck again!
They see the writing on the wall. I think they're just counting the days and treating every day that they're still in government as a gift at this point. Because this is just spiraling down the toilet in terms of their popularity and in terms of all of their policies. They're going nowhere. And they're not bringing any new solutions to try and fix the problems. That's been commented on. So this is where he's at. Nobody wants you here. And even the interview is challenging. Like, okay, well, that's great that you want to do this, but nobody wants you here.
Listen, there'll be an election eventually in which people get to make that choice. But I am not giving up on them. I'm not giving up on Canada. I'm not giving up on the progressive vision of progress that we've been fighting for every single day.
The only people that you give up on are the people that you decide, you wonder if we should tolerate them anymore. Right?
Of course.
Right, Trudeau? So, just everybody but them, I'm not going to give up. Those people I'll give up on, but everybody else, yeah, I'm still here.
Let's talk about housing, because it's something that affects everyone. And there's been a lot of struggle in every Canadian city, every Canadian province, to try to find affordable housing. One of the issues which your government has recognized is that there's more people than there is housing necessary. There's, I believe, a need for 3.5 million homes by the end of the decade. You've promised 30,000. It's only 1% of the supply. Why so low?
On the contrary, we've actually made commitments that are adding up to about 300,000 new units over the coming decade.
Oh, 10%! Oh, wow.
But over the coming decade, what?
Oh, we need 3.5 million homes by 2030, and Trudeau and his buddies, they've committed to 300,000. Wow, you guys.
But see, where the interviewer is taking this is actually accurate. Fox, what's 300 divided by 10?
30.
Right, that's the 30,000 she's talking about. 30,000 in a year. That's what she's talking about. Congratulations, Trudeau. We need 3.5 million homes now.
And that's based on current population levels. That's
Right.
not counting all the kids that are going to be born, and that's not counting all the people that Trudeau is going to be bringing into this country.
Right, so let's go with, well, Trudeau's, 300,000, au contraire, mon ami, over the next 10 years. If Trudeau gets his way, he's going to have another 5 million people in Canada. So now you're up to 8.5 million people minus the 300,000. And, now you're only down to 8.2 million houses that you need.
These are the kinds of things we need to accelerate, and there's no one way of doing it. What we've come at is not a single silver bullet, but a massive range of initiatives, whether it's the first home savings account that 300,000 people have used to start being able to save up for a down payment.
Bullshit.
How many times are you going to keep mentioning that stupid savings account? And I don't mean to get frustrated, folks, but you can't live in a savings account.
Not only that, but I just looked this up while we were sitting here. The savings account that he's talking about has a contribution limit of $40,000. A regular TFSA, if you have one or if you open one this year, has a limit of $95,000.
Yeah, the main difference between the home savings account is you can write it off for tax purposes. But still, those people opening a home savings account does not build houses. So trying to incorporate that into your strategy to get houses built is ridiculous, number one. And number two, nobody has money for that account. Nobody.
Whether it's the Rapid Housing Initiative that has quickly got things up and running across the country, whether it's the Housing Accelerator that is securing deals with cities that are transforming their zoning, transforming densification, so they're building more places near public transit to create more livable cities and communities. And those things are starting to land, and they will just accelerate over the coming years.
Fact checked, all of these initiatives that he's talking about were already in play. They were already on the books to be built. These aren't new. It's not like he landed in these cities and they said, oh, well, we were going to build 30,000 homes, but since you're going to give us $150 million, now we're going to build an additional 70,000 homes. That's not what's going on here. And the real question is why are you just giving cities money, like $100 million, for them to say, oh, well, we're going to rezone things. Meanwhile, you've had this quote-unquote housing accelerator, this $4 billion fund, for the last, 3 or 4 years? What have you done? Nothing. What did you do for the first 5 years when you said there was a housing crisis that Stephen Harper didn't solve? Nothing.
Well, and Pierre and the Conservatives have a carrot and stick approach to this with the municipalities. It seems like Trudeau is just giving the municipalities money and that's the end of it. Here you go. Enjoy. Whether they're doing something good or bad with it doesn't really seem to matter. The Conservatives, on the other hand, are saying that municipalities have to increase their targets by 15% and then they'll get their funding. Or if they do not meet those targets, then their funding will be decreased by 15%.
Well, it'll be decreased by the percent at which they missed the target. So if they missed it by 5%, you get 5% less. But if you increase it by 5%, you get 5% more. So yeah, it's a carrot and stick approach. Trudeau is just giving everybody carrots, whatever they do. So you've already given them a whole bunch of money over the last few years, and they haven't done anything. And your solution is, I know, let's give them even more money.
On housing, one of the big issues has been whether there is enough for those who are being welcomed into Canada. In the most recent survey we saw, more people came into Canada in the last quarter than since 1957. And yet your government is also acknowledging that there's not enough housing. Do you think that you bear some responsibility for the housing crisis based on your policies?
Oh, we absolutely have to be part of solving for this, but let's be clear about the numbers we're seeing.
I really love all these questions. These are the questions that everybody wants to ask Trudeau. I really appreciate that gloves are off. They're being asked in a nice way, but the gloves are off from this Global News interviewer.
Only about a quarter of those numbers are the federal permanent resident immigration numbers. 3/4 of those numbers are actually in 3 categories: asylum seekers who are arriving irregularly, international students, where there's been an amazing spike in that, a concerning spike in that, and temporary foreign workers as well that are needed for growing our economy, for working in our businesses. And on all 3 of those, we have specific plans on it. We're working with international partners on the asylum seekers. We're making sure that institutions across the country, as they get accredited by the provinces, are both legitimate institutions, because we've seen some fraud and some sketchy practices there, but are also able to house the international students that are coming, so we're not putting pressures on the communities. And around temporary workers, making sure that employees and employers have a role in ensuring housing. If they absolutely need to bring in foreign workers, they have to make sure that there's going to be housing for them as well.
Did I understand that correctly? He's pretty much saying, okay, so only a part of these are federal sponsored immigrants or whatever he had said, but the other categories, they're not our fault, so they're not our responsibility for housing.
Yeah, he's trying to say that of all of the people coming in, only a quarter, he's saying like 250,000 or something like that is what he said. So what, you're trying to say that there's another 500,000 people that have come into the country, and he's trying to categorize foreign exchange students or international students as a big part of that? Like, I'm sorry, but there's not like 100,000 students coming in the country.
It's pretty much like him saying, well, we're only responsible for, this percentage of the people coming into the country as a federal government. So that's the responsibility that we require for housing. Like, the other people need housing. It doesn't matter what pretense they're coming into the country for, whether they're asylum seekers or students or temporary workers. They still need somewhere to live. And Trudeau's pretty much saying like, oh, well, they're not our responsibility, so we don't have to house them.
But he's also trying to say that asylum seekers crossing the federal border, which is a federal responsibility, isn't his fault. Like, how much else are you going to say isn't your fault? Because asylum seekers, that absolutely is in your wheelhouse. It 100% is. And then you're talking about, foreign workers. Well, buddy, here's the thing. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say, fine, I accept your premise. Then what that means is you shouldn't be bringing in any of the 250,000 people if they don't have houses.
Yeah, all these people coming to the country need a place to live.
Like,
it doesn't matter how they got here, what the pretense is, why they're here. They need somewhere to live.
Go back to immigration, though, because that is a federal responsibility. And you were clearly articulating when I looked at the interviews from you last year that you knew housing was a problem. Yet it took until the last month or so for you to act. So I go back to the question of, do you bear some responsibility here?
Good. Do not let him off the hook with this. 100%. You're in charge of immigration. You saw this coming. You didn't do anything until September. Why?
Because he started dipping the polls real bad in September.
Well, of course, we all bear responsibility. This is a challenge that we have to work on all together. But from 2017 onwards, we put forward a national housing strategy that has been making sure and securing more homes on people. The spike in temporary arrivals over the past 2 years, a total upwards of 2 million people, need to be responded to, and that's why there are very specific challenges that we are addressing in partnership with municipalities and provinces, but also with international partners to make sure that we're managing that flow right. We need to continue to protect immigration. We need continued immigration in this country, but we have to protect the integrity of our system.
We need to protect our borders, and you're doing an awful job. You know what I learned actually this week on Reddit is that if you fly into any country, it doesn't have to be Canada, but let's say Canada, if you fly into a country, Canada, and you don't have the proper visa, you don't have the proper paperwork, you're not supposed to be here, it is the airline's responsibility to get you back to where you came from. Now, that does not mean they'll do it for free, but it is their responsibility not to abandon you in the country, say Canada, that they dropped you off in.
I'm just focusing on the first thing he said. Well, this is all of our responsibility. No, it isn't. It is yours. Full stop. Buck stops with you. You're the leader of the country. You wanted the title. You wanted the responsibility. Then you get the accountability. Also, blame. So no, this isn't my responsibility. It's not Fox's responsibility. It's not the 34,000 people who watch us and their responsibility.
It's not Pierre Poilievre's responsibility.
It's yours.
I want to move on to foreign and defense policy, something that really has played a significant role in domestic politics this year, perhaps more so than usual, with all the crisis that the Canadian Armed Forces have been called on to help with. You say a Canadian citizen murdered on our soil by a foreign government, concern about Iranian senior regime officials intimidating Canadians, concerns about China intimidating the diaspora population here as well. When you look at the national security picture for the country, what do you see?
I see an incredibly complex world in which Canada, being a country of laws, a country of defense of the international rules-based order, has a more important role to play than many other countries around the world. If you look over the past number of years, whether it's been with China and the two Michaels, whether it was the challenges we had with Saudi Arabia, whether it's the challenges we have right now with India, whether it's ongoing challenges with Iran around PS752 and foreign interference on the ground. Continued challenges with Russia and their violation of the UN Charter and the international rules-based order in engaging in invading Ukraine. Every step of the way, Canada has doubled down on our values and on the rules-based order. We have shown that we stand up for what is right and what is our system of justice. And we have stayed strong at a time where bigger countries and countries that play by different rules have tried really hard to impact us, and we're continuing to defend ourselves in all the right ways.
In all the right ways, and we stand up for our values. Well, the two Michaels didn't really think that, because the two Michaels are involved in a lawsuit for the federal government for negligence in how they actually handled their imprisonment over in China. And they're about to be paid millions of dollars because of it.
On the one hand, I want to say good for them, but on the other hand, it's taxpayer money, so I'm conflicted.
Yeah. Like, it's terrible what they went through.
Absolutely, and they should be compensated for it.
And I think Trudeau should be forced to pay it out of his money. That's never going to happen.
Take it away from the Trudeau Foundation.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you think that part of the reason why some of those bigger countries or our allies aren't listening is our lack of investment in foreign policy and defense?
Canada has continued to step up as a member of NATO, as an international partner, whether with our Indo-Pacific strategy or things like investing in vaccine facilities in South Africa, or being part of significant investments across Eastern Europe in nuclear plants and things like that. Canada is a very engaged international partner, and countries around the world continue to look to us as one of those countries that's always going to stand up and defend the rules.
Really? Well, just because you think something or say something, Justin Trudeau, doesn't make it true. Case in point, article from the National Post today. Canada seen as an unserious player on the international stage, says Chamber of Commerce Chief Executive Officer. Parambidi said in an open letter to the Prime Minister that the country needs to boost defence spending to deal with an increasingly dangerous world. The head of Canada's largest business organisation wants the government to step up internationally, warning the country is seen as increasingly irrelevant on the world stage. Parambidi, CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, released an open letter to the Prime Minister this weekend arguing that the country has to do more and develop a foreign policy and defence policy designed to meet today's challenges. Beatty said he recently went to several events in the Indo-Pacific region and found the country was not considered a serious player. Quote, Canada is increasingly being viewed by our partners in the region as a well-meaning but unserious player on the international stage, end quote. Beatty, who was defense minister in the Mulroney government, argued Canada has prospered because of the peace and stability offered by the post-Second World War it helped to establish, but as the war in Ukraine is demonstrating, that order can no longer be counted on. Quote, it is clear that we can no longer take for granted the stable and peaceful international conditions that Canada helped to shape following the Second World War. This moment calls for a sober assessment of our international priorities and a recalibration of how we engage with other nations, end quote. You know, the fact that Trudeau actually has the gall to say, oh, countries around the world look to us as a serious No, they don't.
Maybe they used to under Stephen Harper, but they definitely don't now.
No, not at all. And you can see that in the announcements that Canada is being excluded.
Security intel that Canada is being excluded from.
Yeah, and the defense pacts and all of this. Because people don't trust that we actually have our house in order when it comes to foreign interference and Chinese influence. So no, we don't have our stuff in order, and we are not a trusted member, and we're not considered a serious player. So try again.
That's not what I hear from our allies. They point to us having 3 days worth of ammunition if a war to break out, to not having tanks that function, and those that are overseas in Latvia, and the government has not made efforts to replace them. They point to $1 billion coming in defense cuts. They point to you allegedly, privately saying that we'll never hit 2% of GDP.
Wow.
This reporter's on fire.
I love it. And I love that she's backing our stuff up too.
Yeah, we haven't seen this interview yet, so we're kind of reacting to it, quote unquote, live in the studio here. So we don't know what who's going to say what next, right?
Yeah, we were paused for a minute as I was pulling up that article, and Fox was saying, "Oh, I thought I read somewhere that there was somewhere that they said that we had 3 days of ammunition." So it was great that actually Mercedes, the interviewer, actually pointed that out and confirmed what Fox was saying off camera. So, like, it's no joke. It is absolutely no joke. Well, I guess it is a joke to all of our allies, and that's the tragedy.
Those examples are all specifically on defense. What I'm talking about is the large international frame. But even on defense, we have since 2017 stepped up with about 70% increases on our defense spending. We're going to continue to do more and more in defense. We just announced a $38 billion NORAD modernization. We're stepping up with F-35s. Yes, we've had to make up for lost time when under the Conservative government, defense spending dipped below 1% for the only time.
But you've been in power for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
You said you'd never buy the F-35s, which was part of the delay there, and your own chief of the defense staff is saying that if there were to be a war tomorrow, Canada would be in big trouble.
And And because he delayed on those F-35s, the price went up significantly. So it's actually costing Canadians even more money than if we had bought them initially.
But Mercedes just made a good point. Not only would Canada be in trouble, like as a country, if war broke out, but private citizens wouldn't be able to do anything because the Trudeau government's trying to take their weapons away as well.
Right. Well, that's the thing. We are a laughing stock when it comes to our military. And if you recall, when she's like, "Yeah, but you haven't really done anything," and he's like, "Well, those examples are specifically on defense." Yeah, that's the problem, dude.
Yeah, because that's a federal responsibility.
Or is that not your fault either? That's everybody's fault.
It's Harper's fault. It's always Harper's fault.
Apparently, but. I love that Mercedes said, no, you've been in power 8 years. You've had 8 budgets to deal with this.
Yeah. Isn't that on you after 8 years in power?
Everyone is in big trouble because we have been shipping, all of us as allies, as NATO allies, shipping massive amounts of ammunition to Ukraine right now because Ukraine is on the front line of defending not just their own territory, but their international rules-based order. And that's why we are so unequivocal on Ukraine. And quite frankly, even yes, as we're fixing those procurement challenges to make sure we are getting more ammunition for Canada, for training, continuing to be there for Ukraine despite the hesitations by the Conservative Party is the best way to protect our future as a country.
He is not doing well in this
No,
interview,
he's drowning big time.
What his answer was right there is actually a further indictment of the mismanagement of the supply and logistics program for our military. So essentially what he said there is, well, the reason why we don't have ammunition is because we gave it all away.
That's such a bad excuse.
Well, and it's not the first time he's been in this situation. Remember when the COVID-19 outbreak was happening initially in China? What did we do? Trudeau sent all of our N95 masks over to China. And then when it came over here, we had none. This is a continuing pattern for him. Oh, well, just give everybody else everything else. And I won't worry about replenishing the stock that we had to begin with.
And I won't worry about Canadians.
And you talk about the Conservatives, Trudeau. What Pierre has talked about is looking at manufacturing ammunition in Canada so that it ends up being cheaper for us to purchase it and we give jobs to people. That's a win-win. He is just... I don't even think he realizes how silly he's making himself look.
But Canadian soldiers are looking at this and saying, we can't protect our country right now.
Right. We are continuing to do that. We are continuing to invest in our front lines, in our equipment for our military, as people expect us to, but we're doing it in a responsible way.
That's your answer.
A responsible way by cutting $1 billion from military spending?
That's your answer? Hey, boss, we only have 3 days of ammunition should a war break out. Well, we're responding to this like everybody expects us to. Let me reword that. You're responding to this like everybody expects that you would, not that you should. Because nobody has confidence in you. That's why nobody wants you as a prime minister. That's why nobody wants the Liberal government right now. Because you prioritize gender ideology over defense spending.